Is Pat the dog the magic bullet to forehand power and spin? In the short answer, yes. However, trying to focus on this position instead of the other important underlying factors could be doing your game more harm than good. Most of the time, players are not getting what we would consider a full dog pat, and their racket usually faces the ground at varying degrees on different shots. In the past, I have been a big advocate for the pat the dog position, which can be credited to Rick Macy, but I also stress the importance that you should not force this movement. Patting the dog needs to be a byproduct of relaxation during the start of the forward swing. We also need to consider the fact that there are many variations in the forehand setup, and there have been successful players that don't have much of a dog pat at all. Pete Sampras won 14 Grand Slams with his racket on edge in the backswing. Serena Williams usually has a minimal pat on the forehand, and she has a great forehand. Maria Sharapova also has what we would consider an old school backswing, where the racket disappears behind the body instead of staying on the outside. Del Potro, another example, is also proof that you don't need a big pat to rocket your forehand. Now, in modern tennis, especially on the ATP Tour, the dog pat is more common among players, and it does result in greater amounts of topspin and racket head speed. However, it is not vital, especially if you're just a recreational player, although eventually you should integrate this into your forehand down the road. But there are more important fundamentals to master first, such as a proper unit turn, the extension of the arm from the slot to the contact point, and the covering of the ball in the follow through and uncoiling phase with your body. Now Roger Federer is an example that we all try to model, and he definitely implements the pat to some degree on every ball. The reality is, he does it to different degrees at different times. At maximum pat on any given ball, the racket can be closed at a wide range of angles. Typically, there is more pat when the ball is lower and less when the ball is higher. Another important complexity: the tip of the racket at maximum pat can point in radically different directions, straight back, or directly at the sideline, or even in between. Now, this begs the question if players are actually consciously patting the dog in different directions during the swing. The answer is almost certainly no. Now, the real cause of the dog pat can be attributed to the racket face being slightly hooded in the preparation phase of the stroke. When the backswing descends as a relaxation, the racket will naturally fall parallel to the ground. This can only happen if you consciously keep the racket head in front of your hand. This is why we see more players on the ATP inverting the racket in the takeback. It allows for a more extreme dog pat and prevents the racket from leaking behind the body too early. So, the leak is not the end of the world, but most pros nowadays prefer not to have a leak at all. I guess they called the tennis plumber. Again, not essential at a recreational level, but at the advanced level, probably yes, especially for the guys. Now, if you want to automatically start patting the dog on your forehand without thinking so hard, here are some things that you can do. The key is the outside backswing, coined by Rick Macy, where the racket head stays on the outside of the body while it is slightly closed or hooded. From this position, players straighten the arm and pull forward. Due to variations in backswings, this produces different degrees of dog pats. Federer's racket tip usually points to the side of the court, where Novak's racket tip is usually pointing around the back fence or in between. His backswing is also much less compact than Federer's, so we see different variations when we have different styles of takebacks. These variations can also have something to do with the hitting arm structure, where some players get the straight arm at contact and others hit with a bent arm structure like Novak and Sinner. So in summary, the pat the dog is achieved not by pushing the racket down to the court, but it is a consequence of setting up on the outside of the body, keeping the racket face slightly hooded and inverted, and then relaxing in the descent of the backswing and essentially losing all tension. When you do this relaxation, if you want to pat the dog without the racket going on edge, you need to make sure you're not letting it tail behind the hand until you start the swing. If you like what you learned here, I recommend taking the next step and going into my online course because it takes these concepts and builds on them and shows you a complete system for enjoying tennis for the rest of your life. You can get started by clicking the link down in the description and you can sign up on my website.